So we make this where you can't see it even more. But on here is a list of sins, and I'm not going to really ask the question and expecting you to answer a question based upon sins that you have in your life, okay? I've got this list of sins that are on here, and I apologize for those of you that if I have a typo or a misspelling of something, but if there might be some things upon this list that you might not see. I see here murder, lust, sexual impurity, adultery, covetousness is another word, I think. Stealing, idolatry, disobedience, greed, lying, Sabbath breaker, vulgar language, jealousy, and the list goes on. And maybe some of you could add to the list if you would like, and just to kind of make sure that nobody just throws himself underneath the bus. I'm not going to ask you to add to the list or anything like that, but these are just kind of subject matter type of, they're not like, if you're talking about topics about lying, it's like not lying to your brother or sister or something like that, or greed. The topic is greed. It's not about a specific type of greed or anything like that, but we all deal with certain types of sin. And so this whiteboard represents people that have sin in their life. And I just want to kind of give you just a short, small illustration of what God wants for your life as it pertains to sin. If your life is this whiteboard, essentially what God's will for your life is for your life. So if you got murder in your life, He wants it erased. If you've got sexual impurity, He wants to erase it. Idolatry, it wants to be gone. Disobedience, anger, stealing, lust, adultery, coveting, lying, greed, jealousy, Sabbath breaking, vulgar language, sin. And so if your life is this whiteboard, I know that you can kind of see them still. If we had some Windex or something like that, that'd be completely gone. But God's will for our life is for sin to be eradicated, completely gone from your life. That's God's will, okay? Now I want you to pay attention to this. If you have sin in your life, the only reason why that you have sin in your life is because you value sin more than forgiveness. If you have sin in your life, it's because you value sin more than forgiveness. Because what we know about the character of God is that He is a forgiving God. What we know about God is that He wants this to be your life. He wants to erase sin out of your life. Now, I know that probably in the midst of our minds and thinking in our minds, we're thinking, okay, it is difficult to get here. On your own strength, yes, it is difficult to get here. But God's will for our life is to completely eliminate sin. If you guys would, I'm going to tell us kind of an Old Testament story that maybe some of you are familiar with. Turn to Genesis chapter 50. It's the last chapter in the first book of the Bible, and it's a story of Joseph. And as you're kind of turning there, I want to just kind of give you a synopsis. I mean, Joseph's life was kind of like a roller coaster ride. I mean, it had ups and downs. His brothers threw him in a pit and kind of just, said that he was dead and threw him off into slavery, and that was a low, and he got sold to a master, and he was faithful to his master, and so the master put him above all of the slaves, and so that was a high. And but he got to being so close with the master and the family that the wife kind of took on to Joseph, and so he kind of the wife of the master kind of wanted Joseph to kind of go into sin with her and get into bed with her, and children are in here. We'll go on. That was kind of a low, because what happened was that the master had to throw him into jail, and whenever he was in jail, that was kind of a low, but he was also very kind to everybody and did what he needed to do, and so they kind of put him in charge of a lot of things in the jail, and they were kind of the jailer's right-hand man, and so that was a high, and so basically, I don't know if any of you ever been to Six Flags before. There's a couple of times I went to Six Flags, and I've been thinking, okay, I'm going to ride this thing called the Texas Giant. And it's like this wooden roller coaster. And I think, okay, I've been riding these other roller coasters, like Mr. Freeze and the Batman and the Titan and all these other types of roller coasters, and it shouldn't be any different. So getting on this Texas Giant, it is a wooden roller coaster. And so I'm kind of revealing my unyouthfulness. I get on the Texas Giant and get on there, and it hurts so bad. I mean, riding this thing, you're going up and you're like, dun, 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 and then you go down and you're like, dun, 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 like that the entire time, and you get off and you just felt like that you have been pulverized, like somebody's trying to pulverize your kidney stones or something all over your body. And that's kind of how I feel, and I'm just so sore after I ride something like that. And I feel like that's exactly the picture of Joseph's life. He had these highs and these lows, and he was one of the Pharaoh's right-hand men. And so we get into chapter 50 of Joseph's life, and the brothers send word that Joseph's father has passed away. Genesis chapter 50, starting with verse 1. Joseph fell across his father's body, wept over him, and kissed him. Joseph then ordered the physicians in his service to embalm his father, and the physicians embalmed Israel. They mourned for him 40 days, because that this is a period required for embalming. Then the Egyptians mourned for him for 70 days. After the period of mourning had passed, Joseph spoke to Pharaoh's household. If you approve my request, give Pharaoh this message. My father's made me promise, telling me, I'm about to die. You must bury me in the tomb I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. Now let me leave and let me bury my father, and then I will return. I skip down to verse 15. When Joseph's brothers realized that their father was now dead, they said, what if Joseph bears a grudge against us and wants to pay us back seriously for all the terrible things we did to him? So they approached Joseph and said, your father gave us orders before he died, telling us this is what you should say to Joseph. Please forgive your brother's sins and misdeeds, for they did terrible things to you. Now please forgive the sins of your servants, of your father's God. Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Could you just hold it right there? I kind of understand what the boys, the brothers are going through. And I believe that you kind of understand what the brothers are going through. Because you live in a society that forgiveness is kind of scarce. You live in, we sang this song about God's kingdom. Build your kingdom here. We want this place to look like your kingdom. We want to behave like your kingdom. And so God's kingdom is built upon the forgiveness of people. There is no reason. I kind of get sad because I think that sometimes we get into the state that God has offered this love and forgiveness to all of us that we don't even reconcile. We don't come to the point in which the brothers have made this idea saying, what if our Joseph bears a grudge against us and pay us back seriously for the terrible things that we've done? Notice that they recognize what they have done. whenever it comes to sin, sometimes we don't recognize it as such. We don't recognize it as something that needs to be forgiven, or, hey, because of society, everybody deals with this. If everybody has to deal with this, if everybody does this, then it seems to be like that it's human nature, and God will kind of brush over this. And it seems like whenever we deal with this thing called forgiveness, we might think, okay, so this thing called forgiveness, is it really real? I mean, does He really forgive us of this type of stuff? Because in our culture in which we live in the same era in which the brothers live in. I mean, is He going to repay us for the bad things that we have done? I know that we wrestle with this because I have conversations with lots of people dealing on this topic. Conversations that kind of go a little bit like this. I'm going through this situation right now, and it's a bad situation. Do you think, Pastor, that I'm going through this situation because God is getting back at me for this awful thing that I have done? So we kind of think of it in that shape or form. We kind of think of it as if that if we sin, then somehow there has to be a balance of things that happen. If we do bad things, then we get bad things. And so whenever we look at it and how our society, how our culture has transformed the way that we've thought about forgiveness is by the end of our lives, we might think, okay, if I have done more good than I have bad, then the balance kind of tips in my favor, and so therefore that God is going to recognize me and say, welcome in and then share your inheritance. Come get your treasure. If we have done more good than bad, do you know that that is not at all the way that forgiveness works? It's not. And so, first year of marriage. Kind of difficult for Cassandra and I, and if it makes, I mean, we kind of still have, and we had our moments in which that we kind of got after each other. I mean, at each other's throats, and just kind of moments in which that we didn't like each other very much, because, I mean, we have, and if it makes you feel uncomfortable that your pastor and his wife didn't get along, well, just too bad. Thou shalt just be uncomfortable for a while. But I just want you to know that if you have relationship problems, I also want you to know that your pastor wrestles with relationship problems as well, like all of us do, that we have to work at them. We have to be intentional at them. And so one of the things that pops out in my mind, it's like the first thing that pops in my mind, because it was like the first big fight that we had. I hurt my wife's feelings really bad. I didn't know really what I was doing. I thought I was being funny, like I always think that I am. I'm a stand-up comedian. But we came home from church one time, and we were being good Christian people. We were not going to go out and eat, make other people work on their Sabbath day. And so what we did is that we had a frozen pizza. Cassandra was in charge of, see, she's leaving here for the story. I got permission from her last night that I could tell a story. We got a frozen pizza. She put it in the oven, and so the timer goes ding. We get the pizza out of the oven, and there was something wrong with the pizza. She did not take the cardboard off the bottom of the pizza. And so we take it out, we start cutting it, and it's a little bit tough. I mean, a good thing that we didn't cut through it, because we probably, as hungry as we were, we would have ate the cardboard with the pizza. But I kind of laid into it. I was laughing about it, making fun of her. I said, I mean, it's frozen pizza. How could you mess up frozen pizza? I mean, I'm being a jerk. I'm owning that. I'm being a jerk. And, I was telling her, I'm gonna tell this story, and she says, well, be careful. I'm still sensitive about it. And I said, I get it. My bad. Here's the point. She's still a little bit sensitive about it, but do I fear that one day that Cassandra is going to get back at me for how bad that I made her feel during that time frame? Do I live in fear that my wife is one day going to come back and say, remember that time whenever you made fun of me, you made me feel I was about this high to you, and you made me feel about that big? The relationship that her and I have, I do not live in fear that she is going to get back at me. But I think that's kind of the way that we live in our world, which deals with forgiveness, is that we feel like we are going to get back, be given back what we've done. Forgiveness doesn't work that way. Go back to your Bibles. Verse 18. His brothers wept too, fell down in front of him and says, "We are your slaves." Notice their posture. "We are your slaves." But Joseph says, "Don't be afraid. Are you kidding me? You're my brothers. Am I God? You planned something bad for me, but God produced something good from it in order to save lives of many people, just as he's doing today. Now don't be afraid. I will take care of you and your children." So he put them at ease and spoke reassuring to them. Do you know what Joseph's brothers did to him? Now, I know what my brother has done to me. Yes, it is a remembrance in my mind, knowing that my brother had dug a hole, knowing my brother had put netting down over the hole, knowing my brother had gathered up leaves and spread over that netting and told me to walk over that, and told me, and as I did, I fell into the hole. Knowing what my brother has done to me, knowing that there was a rope that was tied onto a brick, throwing it over a tree limb and marking an X on it. He tested it a couple of times. The brick would fall down on that X. Kason, would you stand right there? Here, hold this rope. Now let go of the rope. Gonk. And having to get stitches in my head because of a brick. Yes, I'm still a little bit scarred by all this. But does my brother fear that I will get back at him? Does he live in fear that I'm going to get back? No, because that it comes up in my mind and we can laugh about it, does it mean that I'm withholding forgiveness from him? No, absolutely not. I love my brother. But do you know what the brothers did to Joseph? Something similar, but a little bit more harsh. They sold him into slavery, and they told the father that he has died. His very livelihood. I'm thinking probably our culture would be back, let's wage war on these people. Let's get back at them. But Joseph has this amazing approach to somebody that would wish harm upon them. And now that whenever Joseph is holding all the cards, the brothers come to him and say, "We are your slaves. Don't rain down what you could possibly do to us." Joseph withholds his power and his authority. He withholds what he could possibly do as far as revenge goes. He withholds it. And instead of unleashing his wrath, he unleashes this great picture of what we call grace. To you and to our culture, what did the brothers deserve? What does the brothers deserve? I'm not asking you to answer that, but I just want you to just kind of, in your mind, what do they deserve? So, we've got these pictures, this artwork that we've kind of have wrestled over what these sets would look like. And today, the ones that is hung up today is behind me on your screens and in your bulletin. And it's a picture of a hand being held out. And I love this because, one, I think that it's a posture. It's a posture that maybe many of us can recognize. And I hope that we recognize, because we have a God that in view of our sin, in lieu of our sin, could unleash his wrath of disobedience. But instead, he shows an overwhelming picture of forgiveness. You know, whenever I said, look at this board, and whenever I say, God's will for our lives is for the board to be erased clean, white as snow. The only reason why that we do not live like this is because we value sin over forgiveness. So our God, the great picture of it, our God gives us this great picture of forgiveness and grace in the view of Jesus Christ. John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that He gave." Now, this is not His posture. This is ours. His posture is a giving posture. His posture is a welcoming posture. If you want your life to look like this, it's a gift. It's a gift in which that our only posture needs to be is a receiving posture. This is who we are. There is nothing before Christ that we could possibly give. There is nothing before Christ that we would ever be righteous enough. There is nothing that we could possibly say as far as goodness goes within ourselves before Christ. So I believe that the very first thing as people of God, our posture should always be, God, give me whatever it might be. If it's correction, if it's grace, I'm taking that. If it's love, I'm taking that. Hey, if it's being uncomfortable, if you lead me through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll take it. If it is offering forgiveness, the power to forgive somebody else, oh yeah, I'm taking that. If it's given me the strength to hold on just for a little bit longer, a situation in which that maybe we might be giving up on something, giving up on church, giving up on life, giving up on our marriage, giving up on friendships. If He's given us the strength for that, I'm taking it. Because my only hope and your only hope in making it in this life and making it is from a mighty hand that is willing to give you everything that you possibly can need, because we have a giving God, we have a loving God, and we have a forgiving God. We wrestle with it. I mean, is it just as simple as this? And maybe that's the struggle. Maybe that's the line in which that we deal with. Maybe is it really real? Nah. Or maybe it's like the sin that continues to come back on our board, and we say, okay, maybe this is more comfortable than just admitting I can't do it by myself. Relinquishing control. Is that anybody? Because that's me. I don't want to rely upon this higher power. I want to rely upon me. So my posture continues to be, because God so loved the world that He gave. He gave. He gave his only son. What does that mean? I mean, he pulled off all the stops in order for you and I to have this right relationship with him. He gave. And it's this gift in which that we receive. Can I just say that I really wrestled with, I know that it might seem like such a simple, straightforward thing, but I wrestled with this because I'm wrestling with you. Because I'm wrestling with the thoughts that are going through my mind. As I look across the congregation today, I know that there are transitions that are happening in a lot of your guys' life. Some of you have parents that are aging. Some of you have lost parents, whether that they in a mental state or just lost them. Some of you have a transition of vocation. Some of you have a big vote that is coming up, and it could change the trajectory of your life and what the way that it has looked like. And not that we are imploring upon God to kind of shift the things into our favor or to give us a little bit more blessings or anything like that. But ultimately what we are doing, God, through this transition, I'm going to need your help. God, through this life situation, I'm just going to need you to pour out with whatever you've got to give. Some of you are dealing with some news, some medical news, whether personal or in your family. Some of you are having surgery Thursday. Some of you have had different opportunities, and you're praying, God, if it is your will, I want to be at the center of that. Some of you are just heartbroken because that you've got relationships that are just broken. And you've tried to fix them, and it just hasn't worked. Man, I've listed a lot of you. Some of you are just thinking, man, I just wish that Oilfield would pick up. I mean, if that would just be the case, my life would be a whole lot easier. And I think that there has to be a point in time where we recognize we need help from a great big God, and we need to approach God. I would wonder if some of you would just like to come forward. If I put you on that list, I would love to pray with you, and we have some other people that would love to pray with you. And there's no shame. There's no shame in believing that God can help us. And reaching out to the only source in which they can give us strength, gives us power to overcome, and has the authority to forgive. So I'm asking, I came to some of you and told you that I wanted to pray with you. So I'm going to ask you, come on down, those of you that I ask you that I do want to specifically pray for you. Some of you have got specific things that are going on in your life, and so would you come? And if there's others, would you just come and kneel? We're going to spend some time in prayer. I think that there are some things that God wants to do in the service this morning that I think that God wants to do to you and through you if you would just come at the posture of just surrendering, like Joseph's brothers. I know that you've got the authority, but don't rain your wrath. God, I know that you've got the power. Please give. There's no shame in that. Stephanie, there's no shame in asking the great physician to answer a great big prayer that God's going to change some blood work in your life. There's no shame, Tony, in asking God, if this be your will, let me be the best sheriff that I can possibly be on your authority, God. There's no shame in asking God that. There's no shame that if some of you have broken relationship, God, I've tried everything that I possibly can, but you're going to have to take over. So I'm going to ask Tony and Stephanie to come forward. We're going to pray with them. But if it's somebody that I've specifically asked to pray for them, and it's my honor and privilege to do that. If some of you like to gather around them as well, but if you're in need of something as well, I'm just asking you to just come. CJ is going to play that music as we kind of gather around each other and pray. But if there's others